Hi everyone! Welcome to week 2 of Taking Off the Pressure, one of the programs in our 4-week fast track series. My name is Dina D'Alessandro, registered dietitian, nutritionist, founder, and chief executive life changer at DishWithDina. I have helped hundreds of patients and clients over the past few years meet their health and wellness goals, and I hope I do the same for you. In this program, we are bringing awareness to heart health and cardiovascular disease with Taking Off the Pressure, where we will focus specifically on educating you on how to manage an already existing condition of high blood pressure, which is also known as hypertension, or help you lower your risk of getting this condition in the future. So there are 4 objectives that we hope you achieve at the end of your 28 days or your 4 weeks with us. The first is to know your numbers and your lifestyle habits in order to help you establish a baseline and then also help set up sustainable future goals for yourself. The second objective is to help you understand the role and the effects of sodium in the body, along with some other lifestyle habits that play a role in heart health. The third objective is to help you develop heart-healthy weekly meal plans and strategies to support your overall well-being. And the fourth objective is to get you to engage and interact with a community of like-minded people who are looking to manage their current diagnoses of high blood pressure or other heart-related conditions and or reduce their risk of hypertension and cardiovascular disease. So you can do that with us. I'll explain a little bit later too, either in the comments here, or we also have a private Facebook group that I will link to below. This is week 2 out of 4, and this week we're going to give you a nutrition education lesson specifically related to high blood pressure that may change the direction of your future grocery shopping and eating habits. But first, let's review a little bit about what we covered and what you learned, hopefully, in week 1, which is linked below and over here too, one of these places here where you can go back and re-watch that or watch it if you haven't jumped onto that first, to better understand your diagnosis or what a diagnosis means when you're told you have high blood pressure. So what we did last week was we asked you to take regular blood pressure readings throughout the week and then compare them to the blood pressure categories that were established by the American Heart Association. What were your findings? Did you find that you had certain elevated readings during certain times when maybe you ate a little bit more processed foods, packaged foods, takeouts, and so on? Or because lifestyle habits play a role in high blood pressure as well, maybe you were undergoing a very stressful situation and you noticed elevations in your high blood pressure, in your blood pressure readings for those days as well. I do want to note, which I don't know if I did last time or not, that depending on if, in addition to your current diagnosis of high blood pressure, if you also have a diagnosis of either diabetes, usually type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, or an existing cardiovascular disease, your goals for your blood pressure readings might be a little bit different than what the standard normal healthy reading is. So again, I'm going to show that category breakdown for you here, and I will tell you that what is normally under 120 over under 80 as a normal blood pressure reading, if you have an coexisting, I should say, condition, that your goal, depending on what your doctor has told you, could very well be either less than 130 over less than 180 or even less than 140 over less than 90. I know this is a lot of numbers being thrown out to you, so I'll make sure I note it in a graphic so you can get an idea of what you're talking about here. And then, of course, generally speaking, you should be in conversation with your doctor. So you want to make sure that if you had a chance to go meet with your doctor between, then and now, that you ask for a blood pressure reading in the office, and you're getting that at least every 2 years from the time that you turn 18 anyway. So when you're at your physical exam, that's something that you would do normally. But you could also do these things at home. I think we mentioned, blood pressure cuffs or going to the pharmacy and getting a reading there. If you are age 40 or older, or you are at risk for high blood pressure, whether it's in a familial type of sense or just your overall lifestyle habits, which we'll discuss in a bit, put you in a higher risk category, you're going to ask your doctor for a blood pressure reading every year. If you're getting regular high readings on your own when you're at home, which hopefully you are testing at home, if you have a diagnosis, that's something that I would definitely recommend because it can give you some sort of sense of comfort to know every day that you're checking things. And then if anything is a little wacky, you can make sure you contact your doctor and let them know that ASAP. So if you're on meds, right? So even if you're on meds and you're getting these particularly high readings, please make sure you schedule an appointment with your doctor as soon as possible to avoid any complications. Obviously, in significant cases, you might have to end up going to the emergency room if that's the case. So what are some of those lifestyle habits that could potentially put you at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure? Well, some of them are considered modifiable. Like, in other words, what are you in control of changing? And other ones, like I'm about to say right now, unfortunately, are not modifiable. Things like age. Yes, as we get older, we do become more at risk for certain chronic conditions, hypertension being one of them. Race, some studies have shown that certain races, ethnicities, populations, cultures are more prone or more susceptible to certain chronic conditions like hypertension. Family history and genetics, right? So who are you related to? Who in your family has been managing a particular condition like this or has unfortunately passed away from complications related to heart disease? So take a look and see maybe where in your lineage that might happen, because then you'll know a little bit more about being prepared for what might potentially be told to you as far as diagnoses down in the future. And then even though you can't change, as much as we try to be younger, can't change things like age, race, family history, or genetics, unfortunately. But even though you can't change that, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't manage it. You might be swimming upstream for sure. It could be a little bit more challenging. You might be a little bit more disciplined or have to be a little bit more in control of certain things. But if it means that much to you as far as monitoring and managing your health, then you'll take this into consideration. Now, the other things that are considered modifiable, I would argue sometimes are a little bit challenging as well. Let's start with sodium intake, right? The basic is just what you're eating, the nutrition components, the things that are making up that food, the ingredients in it, the sodium amount that's in there. So sodium and salt, I'll use those words interchangeably. They don't exactly mean the same thing. Sodium is an element, a mineral, but salt is a component of both sodium and chloride. So that's what table salt is, but we're going to just call it sodium or salt for simple purposes here. Physical activity, right? How often you're moving around, what your regular fitness regime might look like, how sedentary you might be, depending on your job, etc. Sleep, huge factor in a lot of health conditions, believe it or not, how much you're sleeping, the quality of sleep that you're getting, and believe it or not, in this case, for the cardiovascular disease discussion, some research has shown that your vitamin D levels might play a role too. So we'll talk a little bit more. I don't know if I'm going to go too in depth on vitamin D here in this program. We might talk about that another time, but vitamin D is something that you can get through food, you can get it through sunlight, and you can get it through supplementation as well. So if you have ever been vitamin D deficient, that might have put you at risk for high blood pressure too. The next list of items here are tobacco and alcohol. So again, modifiable, yeah, sure, but like how easy is it to quit smoking and quit drinking if you've been doing it a lot and for a long time? It's not super simple. So the reason why those things come in is because they cut off pathways in your body that instead of protecting your cells, they cause some sort of disruption in there. Again, easier said than done. Quit smoking. Okay, well, I'll admit and I'll confess to you here, I smoked for 23 years. It wasn't super easy to quit. I did it about 4 times over the course of about 14 years. So I finally did quit. And I haven't smoked, I think, in about like 8 years or so at the time of this taping here. And so, yeah, that was a tough thing to do. But, was I more at risk than I was before as far as cardiovascular disease? Possible. I've dealt with my own hypertension issues, which I mentioned. Maybe the smoking had something to do with it. And so the same thing goes with alcohol as well. And then, as I said earlier with the sleep discussion, but stress plays a huge, huge role too, right? People's blood pressure, when their blood boils, when they get very anxious about things or very nervous about things, or they're undergoing a lot of stressful situations, whether it's at work or family or just like environmentally speaking, or mental health problems, these things all play a huge role in your overall well-being. But just keep in mind, all of this stuff could also put you at higher risk for hypertension. And that's really the focus of what we're doing here today, which, by the way, is a great time for me to stop for a second and ask you just to comment down below with, maybe a thumbs up. Are you feeling okay about what you've been seeing in your readings? You don't have to be too specific, because I realize this is private medical information that you might not want to share. But see if you want to share a little bit about, your concerns, what you're doing to keep up on managing or monitoring your health in that way. And of course, I would be very happy if you gave a like to this video, comment below, watch this in full, and subscribe to the channel. Share it with people that you think might find this beneficial as well. All right, so let's get to it. The things that I'm going to share with you, I have a lot of information ahead, so please bear with me. I promise I will try to do my best in explaining this as easily as possible, but I want you to get used to being a conscientious consumer, understanding what you're putting in your body. And the first thing, the best, easiest way to do that is nutrition, right? Look at what you're eating. In the case of whole foods that you recognize as their whole form, right? We're talking about plants and fruits and vegetables and that type of thing, and egg, meat, chicken, fish, etc., that you would just get as a whole item, compared to packaged and processed food. So packaging will always have labels on them, right? So we've shown you before what a nutrition facts label looks like. And in this particular program, we're going to focus on reviewing the milligrams of sodium that are contained in the food that you're eating, because it can be directly related to high blood pressure. So what you want to do when you're eating any type of food product is just read this, see where the milligrams of sodium are coming in, pay attention to the amount of sodium in the item, especially if you have been diagnosed with high blood pressure or cardiovascular disease, or if you have a family medical history that includes hypertension, stroke, heart attack, etc. You're going to be super conscientious about this, and you're going to be mindful as to how many times you are eating packaged and processed foods over the course of the day, because one thing won't really make or break you, but with a significant amount over the course of time, developing these patterns of consistently eating high sodium foods, that can definitely play a role in making your condition worse. I have said this in, I believe, the Gaining Kitchen Confidence program, and I tend to share this little tidbit of info with a lot of other people I come across. Over 75% of sodium consumption in the United States comes from the added amount of salt that is contained in processed and packaged foods. So at the very least, we've said in the past programs, what does that mean to be processed? Well, it's anything that, it could be minimally processed, or it could be quite far away from its natural state. It's anything that's taking the whole food item away from its natural state, right? So it's not in its whole form. It's been processed in some way. Now, minimally processed just means, like, maybe I shuck a corn cob and I take the corn kernels off and I've processed that in some way. But if I've stripped away the kernels and I've put it into some sort of solution and then I've canned it, that's going to be processed as well. So again, I'll share with you a little bit more about processing shortly. But a good rule of thumb is that when you're looking at the nutrition facts label, that the number next to sodium, and I'll share the graphic here with you, should be no more than 2 times the number next to calories. So yes, the units are different, right? One is in milligrams, the other is in calories, but you're only comparing numbers. So what we have here in this example, this fictitious food item here, there are 250 calories. Let's do the math. 250 times 2 is 500. Sodium here is at 470 milligrams, which is less than 500. So that's a moderate amount of sodium in a product, and it might not really cause any problems, because the maximum amount of sodium that that a normal healthy adult would be told to get or recommended no more than is about 2,300 milligrams a day. But if you are diagnosed with hypertension, if you're over the age of 51, if you are, believe it or not, of African American descent, then you might have been told by your doctor, and if not, maybe now's the time to ask, and also to be referred to a dietitian, that your recommended maximum sodium intake is 1,500 milligrams or so. So this is something that you wouldn't necessarily know unless you're looking at these labels and these packages. And the reason why I go back and say about the 75% of your sodium intake is coming from processed foods is because people always say, I won't put salt when I'm cooking because I've been diagnosed with hypertension, but then they'll eat bread and cereals and frozen pizza and all of these types of processed foods that have a lot of salt in them. So be conscientious with that. It's a little hard for you to really, unless this is what you normally do, you're very heavy-handed with the salt when you're cooking. It's a very hard, difficult thing to do for people cooking, to add as much salt into a food item, into a recipe, into a meal at the table than what is already existing in a packaged food, processed food. Some of those meals alone could be 1,000 milligrams of sodium. Heat and eat items could be 960 milligrams of sodium. So you're seeing there that like 1/3 of your whole day's recommended amount of sodium intake is contained in one meal or one food item. So just having an idea of what you're eating and what these items are, how much sodium is contained in these items, could definitely make you a little bit more of an educated consumer. If you end up finding that the packaged product is higher than that, ×2 comparison thing that I just gave you, and you would prefer to have something lower in sodium, then by all means go ahead and look for a comparable product that says low in sodium, or just compare the labels between one brand and the next, or maybe it's the same manufacturer's brand but they have a lower sodium version of the same product. But when you're doing that, make sure that you're also comparing the other items in the list of ingredients, because as I've mentioned in some of the things I've filmed before, that when one ingredient for flavor is removed, usually something else is added in there to make up for it, because it has to taste good, right? So when your salt tastes good, salt is what makes things taste good. You salt your food to bring out the flavors in there. If the manufacturer is taking out the sodium or producing a lower sodium version of a food item, they're going to add something else in there. So it's either going to be sugar, believe it or not, or fat, or some other maybe not so great additives and other kinds of like things that are in there that would supplement the flavor. So just be conscientious of this. Now, the fun fact about this is on the nutrition facts label, if it is listed, which most of the newer labels are going to have this, but if it is listed where you can see the word potassium, right? So potassium and sodium are kind of at odds with each other. They go hand in hand in like cellular functions, but one goes in and one goes out. So when sodium is at a certain level, then potassium is at a different level. So potassium actually cancels out sodium. So remember what I said in, I believe, week 1, sodium will, if you have an increase of sodium level in your body, it will actually bring in water and hold on to water and make you feel very swollen in that way, right? So you'll be kind of like water retention thing going on there. The opposite happens with potassium. Potassium actually helps kind of flush that out. So you can take those numbers listed, right? So 470 milligrams of sodium is what it is in that food label. But if the potassium is higher than that, then it's almost like having a zero balance there. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I'll try and explain it in a little bit more detail here. The only caveat to this is if you have existing renal, kidney disease, kidney issues, then you might be restricted with with potassium intake anyway. So in that case, you're not necessarily looking for a high potassium food, but if you have hypertension and you're eating packaged goods or you're eating anything that happens to be potassium rich, that might actually help kind of flush out the sodium in there, believe it or not. So fun fact, thought I'd share that with you. The next thing on the list are what's called the salty 6. So these items are usually the highest found in sodium in your supermarket, grocery stores, etc. I mean, there's a lot of things on here that are kind of similar to each other. So take a look at this graphic and kind of commit it to memory, just knowing going in that whenever you purchase a product within these families, it's probably going to be very high in sodium in comparison to other maybe packaged foods. So just be conscientious of that. Make sure that you're minding your label reading. And the last thing on our little list of information here of what we're sharing with you is something called portion distortion. We brought this up, I think, in the Gaining Kitchen Confidence set of the program there, for that set of videos as well. Obviously, right, if you're eating twice of anything or 3 times of anything, if you're not really paying attention to being mindful of your portion sizes, what is appropriate for you, or how hungry you're feeling, then you will be doubling or tripling the amount of sodium that you're getting in that sitting, right? So one serving could be 470 milligrams, as you saw in that food label, but if I eat 2 or 3 times as much as what is kind of like recommended for me to eat in a serving size of that particular food item, then I've just doubled or tripled my sodium intake for that meal as well. So again, all of these things play a role. We don't want you getting super obsessive over any of this stuff, but if you are managing a chronic condition, I really do encourage you to be responsible, take ownership of your condition, learn a little bit about things like this, right? What you're on the lookout for, and this way you can make educated decisions when you sit down to eat. All right, so let's say that you potentially had a lot of sodium going on a particular day. If you end up having a high sodium meal or a high sodium day, whether you've purchased the food item with a lot of sodium or you happen to have like a takeout meal, which also could have a lot of sodium in it, a few things can happen. So you might actually be able to monitor or keep an eye out for certain symptoms and signs. And here's where that mindfulness that we just talked about comes into play. Number one, obviously, you're taking your blood pressure reading regularly. If you see an elevation, it could be directly related to that sodium intake that you had. So again, being mindful of that and kind of correlating that, that's one thing. If it's something that is a little bit is way off, then just be conscientious of that as well. That's the time where you might want to bring your doctor into the loop if it seems like it's very, very high, kind of in that critical factor. But if it's a little bit high, then yeah, sure, it makes sense. I just had a whole bunch of, salty food. The second thing, this is actually something that I deal with. I get the shakes and I feel like a fast heartbeat going on. I get kind of like that, palpitation type of deal, where I also get dry mouth. I feel very, very dehydrated, like, parched, and I just want to like guzzle a bunch of water. Why? Because I just got done saying before, excessive sodium intake holds onto water. Like you get thirsty from it. You need to flush it out. So the other thing I want to point out too, and I try not to focus too much on weight, as you might have seen in some of these other videos that I've done. But if you are dealing with chronic heart-related conditions, fluctuations in fluids could play a role in how your heart is dealing with stuff. So you could very well step on a scale after a heavy sodium intake meal, or a day's worth of, eating a lot of processed foods that are high in sodium. You could step on a scale the next day or even 2 days later and be anywhere between 2 to 4 to maybe even 6 pounds heavier because your body's retaining water. So again, it's one of those things that if you're on medicine or what are called diuretics, where it encourages you to kind of like pee out the excess fluid, that might help. If you're not on the meds or you're just being conscientious about this and kind of monitoring what could be leading up to risk factors that might put you in that hypertensive state at some other point, then just be mindful of that. Oh my gosh, yes, things are starting to feel really tight on me. I got on the scale to weigh myself and I was 4 pounds heavier. It could have to do with the fact that you just ate like a ton of salt. So again, be mindful. Every person's a little bit different with this stuff. Hydrate yourself. Try to not flush it out. I mean, your body's going to do what it's going to do within 24-hour period. You can't necessarily force the water out of your cells, but you can be mindful and drink and make sure you're keeping hydrated. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form a personal trainer. I do not have any kind of certification or degree in sports, exercise, fitness, anything like that. But I can relate to you that the USDA guidelines here in America, what the government would recommend for normal, healthy adults is to engage in physical activity regularly. And what does that mean? What does regularly mean? We're talking about 30 minutes a day, every day, 5 days a week max. Okay, yes, of course, if you want to do 7 days, that's totally up to you, but 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week of aerobic activity, something that's getting your heart rate up, getting the oxygen flowing, getting the blood going. Plus, at least 2 days of what's called strength training exercises. That could be weightlifting or using your body as weight, right? Body weight, like planks and sit-ups and push-ups, I guess. That would be considered body weight there too. So strength exercising there. Now, I will say, aside from me not having the credentials of giving you physical activity guidance, please never take it upon yourself just to engage in a new fitness regimen without consulting your doctor first. Make sure that you have clearance, especially if you're dealing with, chronic conditions or physical injuries. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're cleared to move. And then depending on if you are and what you're planning on doing, there are 3 different types of ways that you can engage in physical activity. You can work on frequency, right? Like how often are you moving around? So you might not do 5 days a week at the onset if you've never done exercise before, or if it's been a while since you've done it. So you might want to set up little small goals for yourself, and frequency would be the issue there. How often am I engaging in physical activity? The second factor under there too could be intensity, right? How much am I sweating? How intense is my exercise? So we're talking walk to a jog to a run, 5 pounds to 10 pounds to 15 pounds, 10 repetitions to 12 repetitions to 15 repetitions. Like we're building up that intensity and making it a little bit harder for you to hit that level of like, okay, I'm exhausted now. And the last item underneath physical activity would be duration. How long are you going for as far as the movement is concerned? Is it 10-minute walks? Is it 20-minute jogs? Are you on the treadmill for 30 minutes or an hour at the gym? So again, building up on these tiny little factors can definitely play a role in helping increase your level of physical activity. So you don't have to take it all on at one time. You can build upon that in either frequency, intensity, or duration. And the last item of note here is behavior, right? So I've said before, it's never about the food, and it comes about with our experiences of how we've eaten throughout our lives, family habits, who does the shopping and the cooking, did anybody do shopping and cooking? Are you a takeout type of family? Which again, nothing wrong with that, but understanding the roles that different types of foods play on your body and your health, definitely being mindful of those things too. Cultures and traditions, oh my gosh, I would never want to take anything away from anyone that has a traditional way of cooking or eating. However, we're going to talk a little bit in the weeks to come about what we can do to modify some of those recipes that we love so dearly but could be quite high in sodium, or use high sodium types of ingredients. And then the third item under behavioral discussions is usually what's called the stages of a change. How willing, how able are you to make changes? It's easier said than done, right? Not to quote, or I should say, not to make fun of a quote on a known, the Nike ads. I'm thinking specifically of just do it. Well, okay, that's, again, for somebody who might not be motivated to just do something, that might be a little bit hard for me to achieve. So it might be incrementally making these steps towards healthier habits, being mindful of things, maybe again tracking things down. We're going to give you some trackable things that you can keep on hand if you so choose to do so, because that will help you establish and understand like where you're really coming from. I'm here, you're here, right? I'm not forcing you to watch these, and you might want to learn a little bit, but not necessarily implement anything just yet. So maybe you're just getting a feel of stuff and you're like, you know what, I'll actually put this into play later on. I don't feel like taking control of anything right now. I'm going to give myself another week, or I'm in the middle of a bunch of stressful things and now's not the time. That's totally fine. You just have to be aware of what's good and best for you. Okay, so we're about to wrap up here with some homework assignments, and before I do that, if any of this resonates with you, I would love if you gave this video a thumbs up or comment below on what you think made the most sense, or something that you feel you might want to implement or focus on over the course of the next couple of weeks as you're doing this program. Share this with others, like and subscribe as always, because you know how the YouTube algorithm works. I stay on here and I get a little bit more able to reach a broader audience if people like you engage and watch the videos. So I really am so grateful all the time whenever anybody interacts with these things. So continue doing that and sharing with others. Okay, homework time. Homework time. You know it's always homework time. Between now and next week's video, we want you to do the following handful of things here. There's a lot of things on here, so we'll make sure we write this down. You have an activity log, which you've had every week, right? We're going to have this every week. This is just to keep track of stuff. If you're like me, I like to just do a little checklist of what I need to accomplish. So your activity log, you can write down all of these things that we're about to give you and keep on track and stay accountable with that. You also have a goal agreement sheet, right? So we had you establish a long-term goal in week 1, and then every week you're going to develop a short-term goal under week 2. So what is the SMART goal? Remember the SMART goal we talked about, that you'll need to achieve in week 2 before week 3 happens, that will bring you closer to that end long-term goal that you created for yourself. And what reward would you like to give yourself at the end of this week if it's something that you do achieve it? So let's get an example here, right? We mentioned, I'm always going to fall back on nutrition facts labels because I think it's very important to kind of be educated in what you're eating. So maybe one of the short-term goals that you have for yourself is adding a little bit of extra time in either looking at what you already have on hand, or when you're going grocery shopping, to really take a look at the labels of things and compare what you see on the back of packaging. So it might take you a while to do that little math equation of, times 2, is this less than, and then is this something that I'm going to have be the sole ingredient in what I'm making, or are there many different packaged items that I kind of have to look at this and go, oh my gosh, that adds up to 2,300 or 2,400 milligrams over the course of a day. So that's just an example. If that's something that you want to add on as a short-term goal for yourself, then by all means do it, or you can make up one on your own. On a related note, right, well, I was just saying, so spend time looking through your kitchen or during your shopping trips to read those labels. So again, that could be part of your already existing short-term goal. If not, I'm adding it onto your list right now. Please continue taking your blood pressure readings, depending on how good you're getting at it and the patterns and habits that you're forming for yourself. You might not have to do it as often, but I recommend at least once a day, but definitely 3 times a day, I think is good if you are dealing with an already existing condition. So usually first in the morning, before anything happens, fasting even before you've even eaten anything, maybe even before you've taken your meds, if you have been prescribed medicine to manage your hypertension, take the blood pressure reading there. Then during the course of the day, take it again, right? Midday is when you're kind of like moving around, depending on how busy you are, what your work environment is, if the kids are freaking you out, take it then. See if it goes up, stays the same, or if it's, the normal range. And then again, maybe at the end of the evening before bedtime, take it once more. Are you a little bit calmer at that time? Or has everything kind of caught up? All the food that you've eaten at that point, has anything played a role in elevating your blood pressure? And is that going to then compare with what you had yesterday and the day before that? And what is kind of like a weekly average for week 2? Then track or take note of your daily and weekly food and beverage intake, physical activity, other habits that we mentioned before that could affect your blood pressure. So all the things that I just read off before, right? Go through the list. Well, I'm, 50 whatever years old, and yeah, my race might be more at risk. And yes, I have, not my personally, I'm just kind of adding this in as if you're saying it. Yes, my family history has been shown that we have a lot of cardiovascular disease issues going on here. So, you kind of are a little bit more aware of what position you're in for this particular condition. And then you can interact with our private Facebook group. So you can reflect on your successes and challenges over the past week or so, see if anyone else in the group is having the same experience, interact with them as well. Were you surprised by anything now that you've kind of been paying attention to your blood pressure readings and habits? And again, I said this before and I'll say it again, I totally understand this is medical private information, so please, personal private health information, you do not have to go into detail. If you want, you can just say, thank you, I've noticed changes, and that's fine. Or don't to say anything, just be like, I found this kind of interesting, or I didn't find this interesting. And then share your goals if you want to, right? So whatever you've created for yourself, for the long-term goal, for the short-term goal, as you see the next week's coming up. And of course, feel free to ask any questions at any time. We have some Dish with Dina people who are on standby if you need any guidance or just have general food and nutrition related questions that we are happy to answer. Last but not least, well, actually related to the Facebook group thing, you can also comment below, but Facebook group is where like the private discussion is kind of happening with some prompts and so on there to encourage discussion along the way every week. But last but not least, I was going to say, you can schedule an appointment with me through my online scheduler. So all of this stuff here that I've been talking about, everything's always like linked and comment in the little info section below. There's all this information, links to things. There's also a calendar on there, a calendar link. So how this works is I normally have like a 15-minute free phone consultation just to see what's up, what might be needed, and how I could potentially be of service for you. It's a very short amount of time, so I can't really go into detail in like actually counseling you, but we can see if you need counseling on a more regular basis in an individual type of environment, one-to-one, then I'm happy to share with you, how that works as well. As of this recording, I am not set up to take health insurance, but eventually I might be, and that could be something that we can be discussed in in our consultations as well. So whatever, just check in with me and see how it's going. Or, I'm always like on the internet and in social media platforms, etc. You might catch me on an Instagram live or on a Facebook live. So you can use those times if you don't feel like meeting with me in person, not in person, you know what I mean, having like a special counseling session with me. You can hang out there and ask me your questions if you have any. And as I said before, right, everything discussed in this video, the resources, the downloadable materials, we have so many things for you, all posted below. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am always so grateful for anybody that's willing to listen to me. And I really hope that you found this beneficial, and I hope you stick with us. And please let us continue helping you embrace and develop new relationships with food, and I will see you again next week.